Hi, my name is Michael Bean, and this is your free lesson for myfreeactingclass.com for Thursday, November the 12th. Today is Thursday, so that means we're doing either an Ask Me Anything, or a guest. Today's guest, Rogi Yu, unfortunately booked a spot on a TV show. And so, fortunately, because it means that he will have even more to tell us when he actually comes in as a guest. Next Thursday's guest, I'm just going to keep reminding you, are the casting directors Annalise Tilling and Erin Lally, who are starting to pick up some of the slack for Corinne Heike, who were some of the heavy hitter casting directors out of North Shore Studios for a long time. But today, you just have Michael Bean, acting teacher. Because you've just got me, and we've only got a couple of people in the session today, but there are folks watching these lessons. I just got an email from somebody in the UK who was like, can I send you a self-tape to look at? Because I can't be there for the in-person lessons, but I've been loving watching them, and that makes me so happy. That there are folks in different parts of the world who are participating in these lessons and watching these lessons. It was exactly my intent in creating them. So I am currently a film and TV actor and an acting teacher. I studied acting and then went on to pursue improv professionally for a couple of years, and then transitioned from that into doing film and TV acting and started my school around the same time. So I've been running a school called Biz Studio, which is for film and TV acting for kids and teens for about 18 years. And I've been teaching film and TV acting to adults for the last, I'd have to go look at my books, maybe 4 years. I had somebody approach me and ask if I would consider teaching adults, and I'd been teaching young people for so long that I was like, well, this place of like curiosity and wanting to make people the experts in their own work, will that work with adults? Like, don't adults sort of need you to like be really bossy and deal with their insecurity by telling them that you know better? And because like I can't do that. Like if that's what you need me to do, I can't do it. I can't go and go like, listen, students, I know what you need. Here's your problem. Here's what you should get. I love how somehow I become like a football coach in my imagination when I'm that kind of acting teaching. So I've been teaching adults regularly for the last 4 years and really finding those classes very, very engaging. So at this point, I teach the advanced classes for teens at my school, and I sub when the other instructors aren't available. And I teach my own adult class. And that's how I'm continuing to learn and grow as a teacher. I also at one point trained in a counseling style called narrative therapy. I was like, teaching acting is sort of like being a counselor in reverse, right? And I started as a joke with a friend of mine who's a counselor, where I was like, you take people who are out of balance and help them be in balance. And I take people who are balanced and I help them pretend to be out of balanced. And then I was like, wait, but counselors probably like know stuff about the technology of working with people's insides that I need to know. So at one point I did like a really deep dive, and I worked as a counselor in a community clinic in Vancouver, doing something called narrative therapy, which, I'm a storyteller, so it seemed like a really intuitive fit. There you go. A little bit of history of Michael Bean to start off today's free lesson. Please tell me what your questions are. What would you like me to talk about first today?
So that's so funny that you started off talking about yourself, because I actually wanted to know more about your beginnings and stuff too. Like that was actually a question I had for you today. Knowing your beginnings, and also I guess one question that kind of tagged on to that I have is, what sparked your desire to act in the first place? Like, was it what sparked that?
Can I answer this question for myself, but also say what I see in general from actors, over the course of 18 plus years of teaching, what I think the common thread is. So I can say that for myself, what got me started was just thinking it was magical and wanting to be part of it. Acting found me in high school, really. And I took a drama class, and there was something about it that felt like good and successful and sort of felt right. to me as a person. But then I just started seeing other peers doing it and just being like, wow, like how does that work? Also, I was raised by television. I watched a lot of TV. So a latchkey kid, grew up and watched a lot of TV as growing up. So the combination of those things, like experiencing acting as magical when my peers were doing it, and not knowing how to get there, but really wanting to, uh, and then having a certain amount of like magical emotional association with film and TV, where I'm like, I don't know why, but it's special. Uh, Makes perfect sense that then I ended up pursuing that professionally. And I think one of the things that drives me as a teacher is that I don't know if you've heard any of the stuff in recent years about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And Carol Dweck, I think is her name. She wrote a book called Mindset. But the ideas have started to sort of percolate out into pop culture. And the idea is that, especially in young children, there's a really strong correlation between folks who have a growth mindset, and being able to learn things and being able to sort of approach work and get more skilled. And so it's connected to achievement, it's connected to self-esteem, it's sort of positively correlated with a lot of things. And the growth mindset is, my skill at this thing, or my intelligence, or my ability to do math, or in this case, my ability to act, is not a fixed essential quality of me as a person. It is something that you can learn and grow. And so, yeah, if I fail 100 times, great. That's me figuring it out. And that, and so I think that despite the best efforts of the teachers that I had at the time, and I wasn't taking professional track classes, I wasn't taking small group classes, I wasn't doing anything like this, of course, because it wasn't available. But I really had, or was struggling with a fixed mindset through a lot of my early life, where I was like, well, you either have it or you don't. And I don't, but man, it looks so magical up there. And so I just can't stop myself. Like, I'm going to keep trying. But really, emotionally, I think I was dealing with every time I did it and it didn't feel to me as magical as it looked out there. I was like, well, I guess I don't have it. Yeah. And so I think that got me started in my primary mission as a teacher, which is to show people experientially that uh, this sort of magic, or how magical it can look, is an illusion. That if you talk to the people who are doing work at that level, yes, there's a craft, there's a skill, there's a lot of practice that goes into it, but a lot of time it's a mess in there. They're full of self-criticism. That that the discomfort and the self-criticism that I was feeling at that time in my life, I thought was information about me as a person. I thought that was information about me and my talent and my skill level, and it wasn't. That was just the process of doing something new and growing and working towards something that I really wanted. So that's how I got into acting. And then I will say that in general, and I've taught especially young people. So I've taught a lot of students who don't have the extra layer of sophistication that as adults we bring to the work, where it's like, okay, I've got my like baseline emotional reason that I'm really here, but then I've got lots of the explanations that I've made for that baseline emotional reason. And those explanations are really fancy and detailed. But like, really, come on, at the baseline, like, we make decisions for emotional reasons and the justifications come afterwards. And I can point you at the books if you want evidence of that. One of the first ones I recommend is anything by Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. He's a professor of moral psychology at the University of Virginia. But this idea that we make decisions for emotional reasons and that the reasoning comes afterwards, which is sort of contrary to the way that civilians. I don't know if I've used this language with you for a while, but I think it's really fun to think of non-artists as civilians. Artists, like, we're artists, like, we get it, right? And then there's all those civilians, and the civilians think that like they're thinking machines that have these inconvenient feelings that come up, and the artists know that like we're just all feeling, and the thinking kind of comes afterwards, and it's often just like justification for the feeling, to the point where if you're doing an acting scene and you do a whole bunch of push-ups, it's easier to get angry, because it's just easier to feel like, yeah, I must be angry. Oh, because I've got my muscles or my blood's going. And you can just trick your body into those things. You just can't have those experiences as an artist without going, wait a second. Maybe I'm more influenced by this on a daily basis than I thought. And so the folks I get often don't have language to explain why they want to act. Right? They'll talk about why they love it or the kind of acting they love. But if you ask a 7-year-old or even a 13-year-old or a 16-year-old, like, why do you want to do this? Then often it's just, well, because I want to. Like, I love it, and here's the things I love about it, but I don't know, I just love it. And so I would say, in general, folks who pursue acting have in common that the experience of being seen is very potent for them. Right? And you heard that from Marina yesterday, who was like, yeah, some people love being in front of the spotlight, but me, I was very shy. That's what she said. And I think that you will find that from a lot of very, very skilled actors, that they self-identify as very shy. But an experience of being seen by other people is so potent for them that they're like, I don't know why, but I want more of that. And so I've had students who, I can't help making a story about it. I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, this person, doesn't have the opportunity to be seen as powerful, in their home or at their school. And so they want to do characters where they get to be a bitch and, like, be in charge. And and once they get that, they're like, okay, I got what I needed, and they're out. But some of them are hooked. Some of them are like, oh, wait, now that I can express and explore and be seen as this part of myself that didn't have an outlet before, I feel more whole and healthy as a person. Right. And so I think that's one of the things that calls people to acting in the first place, is it essentially like a way to, I don't know, get what you might get in therapy, but do it in a way that's a game, and that connects to the magic of storytelling that binds a lot of us together. And so I really do think that there's a thread there. And some people, the reason it's really potent for them to be seen is that that's the experience they know and love. They're like, oh yeah, I'm always the center of attention. I love standing on top of stuff and being a goof and falling off and hurting myself and making people laugh. Like, that's what I do. So of course I want to pursue that professionally. But for a lot of people, it's like, I don't know why, but when people see me or when a camera looks at me, huge adrenaline spike. And then, like anybody who gets hooked on an extreme sport, they come out of that experience and don't die. And then they're like, oh my God, I can feel that level of adrenaline and not die. So maybe that's not fear. Maybe that's excitement. Maybe that's just the thing I want more and most of. And then I will say that for the actors I know who've been at it a long time, right, who've had enough experience acting that initial like rush, changes. Typically, it just shifts from the like extreme potency of being seen to, which can also have kind of like a hungry quality to it, that maybe is not sustainable, to the love of doing something skilled, right, or the love of storytelling, or right, like a connection to something that is bigger and outside of themselves. That's a fairly normal trajectory for career actors, in my experience. So that's that's my long answer to your question about how I got into acting, and a little bit of something that I think was on my mind, just the other day. Somebody asked me, like, why do people want to act? I'm like, let me tell you, I actually have some thoughts on this and a fair amount of evidence to back it up. Okay, more questions. Artie, what would you like?
I have a question, Michael. How did you start your school? That's so fascinating as well. Like, I didn't even know you had a school.
Yeah. That's how I know Kirsten, who was, she and I initiated this project together, Kirsten Clarkson, is because I had a school and she had a school, and she was somebody whose work I really respected. So I reached out to her in my naive and hopeful way. I reached out to her and most of the other folks who were running schools at that point, like, hi, I went to school, you went to school, we should talk. And she was just the person who got right back to me, like, yeah, that's great. Come over for tea. Here's my address. Julia Cameron has this quote, is often audacity and not talent that propels people to center stage, that I think is very, very accurate. And so had I known everything that I know now, I think I would have been much more nervous about starting my own school. But the truth was that I had uh, I kind of hit a wall with what I was doing before that. I was doing corporate work, and it just really was not a good fit. I was very unhappy with it. And just about that time, I was asked to go and give a workshop at my old high school, which was a performing arts high school. And on the spur of the moment, I put out a sheet, like a sign-up sheet, and was like, "Hey, my mom lives, near here, and she's got a common room, at her place, and like, I think I'm going to teach an acting class there if anybody wants to sign up." And I think I had 20 students sign up, and it paid my rent for 3 or 4 months, and uh, so I pivoted, my life, and I wrote a business plan, and I rented 300 square feet in an office building downtown, and put the name of the school on the door as though it was like an official important thing that had been there for a long time. And then I wrote a book because I didn't have credits, and I looked at the other schools, and some of the other schools were like, they were run by people who had very impressive film and TV credits, and they were basically saying like, "Come study with me because I've been on lots of TV shows." And then somebody else was a casting director, and she was like, "Come study with me because I'll cast you in TV shows." And I was like, "Come study with me because I know stuff." And so I wrote a book. I self-published it, just like a little 100-page perfect bound, and I distributed it with like a handmade package to all of the talent agents in town, saying, "Here's me, here's a copy of my book, send me one of your clients and I'll tape one of their auditions for free, so that you can see how I work, so you don't have to take my word for it." And of the like 110 packages that I sent out or something, there are 110 agencies now, so I'm pulling that number out of the air, but it was probably half that at that point, because this was almost 20 years ago. But I had, I think, 3 agencies, get back to me, and they were like, "Wow, like we really liked your book. We like your style. Here's this. We're going to send you this person to tape because then we get free stuff." And those 3 agencies, my relationships with those 3 agencies kept me alive for the first like 3 years. But in retrospect, it was very audacious. I had very little experience. I had plenty of experience teaching, but not explicitly film and TV acting. And so I really was just like, "I'm a teacher, send me your kids." And then the people were like, "Sure, okay, here." Which as somebody who has kids now, I feel kind of sketched out by that. But yeah, at home, you guys can't see Artie and Candy's face, but Artie must have children because you did it like, yeah. So that's how I got started at teaching, was a certain amount of audacity. And I think that one of the reasons that I was drawn a number of years ago to explore counseling and learn more about that is realizing that there is no path to becoming an acting teacher. Acting teachers tend to be skilled iconoclasts. They basically tend to be people who, unless they're working through an institution, basically just hang out a shingle and are like, "I'm teaching acting classes, you should come take it." And if people are still taking their classes a couple of years later, now they're officially an acting teacher. And if people are still taking their classes 10 years later, now they're an established acting teacher. And if people are still taking their classes 20 years later, like now they're like one of the institution. But all those institution people initially started out by just going like, "I don't know, I'll teach a class, sure." And so everybody's so different about the way they approach acting, because everybody really comes into it through their own experience and like learns by doing it. Whereas counselors, you cannot become a counselor or stay a counselor without direct supervision, without having somebody who listens to your sessions and says, "Why did you ask this question instead of that question?" Right? Looks at the transcript with you and says, "Oh, like, well, where were you trying to go with that person here? Something I've done before because I have more experience than you is this." And I wanted to see if investigating that would give me tools that I didn't have yet. I've been trying to bring that in particularly with the new coaches and teachers that I've been bringing into my school, is to offer them some of that extra level of supervision and support. That project got sidelined a little bit by a global pandemic, but we'll come back to it. Yeah, there's
Are all your courses online or?
yes, currently all my classes are online.
Okay.
The studio that I run, which is called BD Street Studios, which is a 3,000 square foot video production facility in downtown Vancouver, is currently open for one-on-ones, and there's a couple of people who are teaching like more scene study based classes there, where like everybody wears masks and they're in a really big room, that's where everybody can sit 6 feet apart. But my film and TV classes, mostly because the instructors who work for me have been understandably reluctant about teaching on in person. So my classes have gone all online for now. And something that I'll say about online classes that I haven't had a chance to say here is that my adult classes have had very inconsistent attendance, over the last 4 years. Like some will come for a couple of months and then they'll leave. But for whatever reason, since those classes moved online, especially the folks in my Monday night adult class, lots of them have been there since March, or April, and so they've been coming for like 6 or 7 months every week. And I'm sure that some of that is just like, give me a lifeline to hang on to in the midst of a global pandemic. But some of that I think is just that attending an online class, which from coming to these, takes less of a bite out of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right there, you're not worrying about travel. You're not worrying about like, where am I going to park? You also get to do that from the safety and comfort of your own space. And so for the actors that online classes work for, I've seen them work better than in-person classes, which I would not have expected. And the story that I'm making out of that, is that for some people, just being seen by their camera, is enough adrenaline to like fire them up. And you kind of need some of that to fill up the work. And then for actors who particularly for actors who've been in class for years, or have their habit or their association with class is, I'm going to be seeing people in person. They kind of need that adrenaline of feeling the other eyeballs in the room, or walking into the actual audition and feeling the director and the producer there, and they're like, oh man, I got this one shot at doing this. And so I think for those folks, they get in front of their camera at home and they're like, I feel kind of sleepy, and I don't know, it's boring, and I'm having trouble staying focused. I'm not really feeling it. And so it's an interesting balance of tracking where you are on that spectrum and going, okay, well, if I need the extra adrenaline in order to focus, then, I'm the person who should do lots of push-ups before every time I do a self-tape. Like I'm the person who should, maybe not sit down for like 3 hours or 2 hours of online class, but instead should do one-on-one coaching and work with somebody for like 15 minutes, so that there's like time pressure. And I have to like deliver in that time, but you can do. And if you're somebody who, like me, like I get super adrenalized. I think I manage it reasonably well in professional auditions, but I love the self-tapes. So if you share, a particularly sensitive nervous system, then online classes, might be a great fit for you. Yeah, it's one of the things that has been present for me in the last, I guess, 7 months of teaching online. It's one of the reasons I was excited to have Iana and Jess in a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you saw their lesson, but they run a theater company called Untold Wants, and the three of us had sort of a little mini roundtable about teaching online, and they talked about some of what they've noticed with teaching in person versus teaching online, and how important it is to sort of keep the focus on the other person, and how you can kind of bring some more of that connection by imagining what they're doing with their body. That like one of the big challenges, which I hadn't really articulated until they said it, is that you just can't see people from like sort of below the chest. So you have to imagine what their like hands and feet and sort of body language are doing. If you want to bring that into a scene. Some of that I thought was really interesting. It's worth listening to their lesson if you haven't. Okay. Any final questions for today's Ask Me Anything?
I have a curious question.
I'm so ready.
I did some background work, and I noticed that the actor had a coach there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like a normal thing, or do you go on set and you're supposed to know everything? Like, I don't know. I couldn't ask any questions because we're not allowed to ask anything.
Oh
We're
yeah,
just
for
supposed
sure.
to, yeah.
Back, yeah, that makes perfect sense. If the lead, like if the stars of the show, particularly if they are from the UK or Australia or something, sometimes production will pay a dialect coach to be on set with them the entire time, to jump in and say like, hey, that vowel is just like slightly off. Sometimes, and the actor themselves will pay out of pocket, to have their, personal coach. But that's for the actors who are the like top of the cast sheet, where they are making tons of money, and it makes sense for either them or production to do that. In general, the thing that you experienced where the actor had a coach with them on set, very rare. Very rare. The other place where productions will sometimes bring in a coach is if the actors are young, right? So if there are very young actors, and especially if it's a show where there's a new director every episode, sometimes they'll have an on-set coach so that the young people have a consistent person to help coach them and get the right performance out of them. I've done that work a couple of times on set. But those are the kind of main places where you will have somebody on coaches. There'll be a dialect coach. There will be sort of like some personal concession made by somebody who's got clout and can force the production to pay money for it, or just pay out of their pocket because they don't care because they got money to burn, or a production who wants to make sure they're getting a quality performance from a young actor. Everybody else is expected to know everything they need before they step onto set.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the acting is extremely competitive. It's got a 99.7% unemployment rate, at any given time, right? Like all actors have another job because the number of them that are supporting themselves solely by acting is very, very low. It's extremely tiny percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Not that actors will ever tell you that, the same way that professional musicians aren't going to be like, yeah, actually I'm a barista / bartender. They're going to be like, no, I'm a musician. I've been a musician for a long time. Because we're storytellers, and we know the power of that, right? I get to tell my friends all the other things I do to work, but if I am talking to decision makers, I'm just going to tell them that I'm an actor. And so it sounds like you had this idea in your head, like, oh, maybe like production like pays somebody to help, and no, it's not going to happen.
No, it was just so interesting to see because it was like so many people and so many moving parts, and then off to the side you see they're getting coached, and then you're like, oh, that looks interesting. You can only observe, right? So
Totally.
I only observed that, and I thought that was quite interesting.
I suppose the other time that I've heard of productions bringing in an on-set coach is if they're hiring somebody who can't act, but has a big audience base. Right?
Oh.
So if you have 1 million Twitter followers, and I'm hiring you on my project because you've got 1 million people who watch your YouTube channel, but I know that you don't have the acting chops to do the role you're being cast for, then maybe on the production side we're like, and we're going to hire somebody who's a coach who's just going to like be there and the whole time. But basically the reason that we're hiring you is because we're expecting some percentage of all of your YouTube followers to come watch our movie, and that will make us X number of additional $1 million. And so it makes sense for us to both pay your salary and your acting coach. Yeah, but that's like, it's a completely different sort of side of decision making that's probably not relevant to almost anybody who watches this lesson.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just a smidge over 4:30. Let's wrap it there. Thank you for your good questions today.
Thank you, Michael. It was awesome. Appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you, Michael.
Leanne lap tomorrow, and then if you have self-tapes, please send them to me for Monday. That goes for those of you who are watching this on YouTube. It's info@myfreeactingclass.com. I need at least a couple so that I can run the self-tape Monday lesson, and I would love to look at yours. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Michael.
Bye.
Bye, Candy.